Gives me great pleasure to introduce my colleague, Professor Prashant Date. Professor Date has BTech in Mechanical Engineering from College of Engineering Pune, COEP Pune. After that, he did his Masters and PhD from IIT Madras in Metallurgical Engineering. His specialization is sheet metal forming and powder metallurgy. Professor Date has been a visiting faculty in two universities in UK. He has done many consulting assignments within India and abroad, particularly in Germany. And he's having many international collaborative projects in the area of his expertise. 10 PhD students have benefited from his guidance over the last 20 years here at IIT Bombay. Some of the participants approached me and said that can someone say something about how to choose a research topic? This is a problem for all of us, those who are beginning their research or those who are guiding PhD students, particularly for the first time or beginning of their career as PhD guides. So, Professor Date is going to share his experience about how to go about defining problems, not just for PhD, but also for projects. And I hope all of you will benefit from his vast experience. Handing over to Professor Date. Thank you.
Okay, so today we'll be dealing with the most important part of the PhD, defining research problem or project. In fact, when I did my PhD and I defined my problem and discussed it with the guide also agreed that I should work on that. That was within the first 6 months. The guide told the students, everybody else in the lab, that Date has finished his PhD. And everybody was aghast. They were looking, how can he finish a PhD in 6 months? He said, of course, he has found the problem. The only thing is now he has to work. So hard work is all that is remaining. So later on, I worked for another 4 years and finished my PhD. So defining the research problem is almost half done. Half done meaning you have to work on it, but then it takes you far ahead. So let's see why one does research, because suddenly out of nowhere you don't get ideas of doing research. So first, of course, is to get a degree or qualification. So that serves as a means of further academic opportunities. Some people want to do many things, many new things. So you hear about people having developed carburetor, people having developed different contraptions of engines, different kinds of machines. You hear about people having developed bicycle-based boats which will carry them across flooded rivers, because that's the need. In many places in Bihar and such places, you have rivers getting flooded, and people have to manage. People have to survive, and therefore, a lot of such innovations take place there. And without calling research, they actually are doing research. So we will see today what is the methodology of research. I mean, it doesn't take years to do it. It can happen within days, months, or in a short period of time. But then the methodology is something that has to be gone through. The thinking has to be gone through. So the solution has to be out of the box, meaning something that has not been tried or that has not been known so far. That's why the objective of the PhD is to contribute to the status of knowledge at the global level. That's the point. So there are many solutions already available, but then we need to move to a more satisfactory solution. New ways to adapt to diversity, because as I told you, when the river gets flooded and then you are left with no other alternative, you have to find your own means of survival. So that's where a lot of innovations take place, and then they are projected on the television by many channels. Building standards and procedures for the future is an extremely important thing. For example, you are trying to develop security equipment, let's say lockers for the banks. Okay, you hear about bank robberies and various ways in which robbers attack the banks and so on. What is normally done is when you design an equipment, several assumptions are made, and then as long as the assumptions turn out to be true, the safety equipment works as a safety equipment. But once the assumptions turn out to be wrong, then the weaknesses of the so-called weaknesses of the safety equipment get exposed, and that is when the Bureau of Indian Standards starts thinking about how to revise these standards and how to actually arrive at new standards. Now, arriving at new standards itself requires a lot of new research to be done, right? So the reliability of a standard depends upon how sound the research has been, because that forms the basis for the new standards which are developed. And once developed, the new standard has got far-reaching implications on the country as a whole. So you take EVM, for example, electronic voting machine. A lot of research will have to go through, will have to be done on the development of EVM, because its reliability has to be ensured due to the sensitivity of the job it does across the country. So it's very important that for setting standards or developing procedures which would be followed on a large scale in future, these standards are based on very sound research. And don't worry, I know that there are 300 people here, so 300 different problems can be solved, and then you can imagine the impact which 300 researchers would make. But then you will never run out of problems. You can never run out of ideas, because every solution to the problems throws up 10 more different issues. So the nature of research is like exploring the unexplored territory, so where the final outcome is not known. So this is where research differs from our undergraduate and postgraduate courses, where the person who sets the question paper is supposed to know the answer. There is only one model answer, and that is known to the paper setter, and then depending on how close you are, you get marks. So if you are absolutely on the dot, you get full marks, otherwise you may get partial marks depending on the marking scheme. So in the research case, there is no single solution, there is no model answer. Imagine that there are several car makers, right? Car is a product which is being made. Toyota is different compared to Hyundai, Hyundai is different compared to Maruti, Maruti is different compared to any other brand. Now, if there were a model answer or one model solution for a car, you would have had only one company making the car. But in reality, the same set of requirements are satisfied by several models which are distinctly different. I mean, the engines are different, the drive chains are different, so there are significant differences among these vehicles. But then there are solutions to the problem of making a car. So what it means is that a research problem doesn't have a single model answer which we are normally used to. I mean, it is very easy. I mean, it's much easier to work with one single solution where one solution is known. Either the student has got there or not, yes or no, and the matter is over. But here, it's a matter of deliberation about how well the solution fits the bill, how well the solution satisfies the requirement which it is designed for. So that is why the final outcome is not known, and you have to find the final outcome. The destination is not known, you have to reach the destination. So the overall direction of the research is formulated. So like Professor Patwardhan said that I work on sheet metal working. So that's the direction in which some field in which I work, or I work in powder metallurgy. So that's the field in which I work. But then the direction of research gets formulated based on a particular purpose which I have to define for the research. So the field is okay, but then the purpose just has to be formulated, then you have to plan it and research is carried out. To give an example, let's say there's a business family. The father tells his son, you start a company, okay, I'll fund a company, you start the company, and it should have a turnover of 100 crores annually. Now the question is, what does the company do? What does the company make? Where to get the finance from? Where to get the land from? Where to get the machinery from? Nothing of that is going to be given by the father or the financer. It is entirely up to the businessman, the son, to find out all these things. So what does he do? So first, his objective, the research problem, is to set up a company. To do what? That is the objective of his research or objective of his company. So he will either make something, or he will make parts and supply to somebody, So he has to do product identification. Just like you have to do problem identification in research, the businessman has to do product identification. Okay, what is he going to make? What if he's going to do trading? Is he going to do trading in tools? Is he going to do trading in software? Is he going to do trading in anything else? So he has to do the product identification. Then he has to do literature survey. What is the literature he looks at? He looks at what are the various loan schemes of different banks. He has to analyze them. Then he has to find out what is the best location of the factory or of his facility. So he looks at gets lots of this information, analyzes it, and then moves forward, takes decisions based on that. So any decision taken today can change tomorrow depending on how the information has turned out to be. So basically, the direction of research, it is similar to direction of research, which changes from initial as the work progresses, because in the example of the business which I gave you, the same thing happens. So it is much easier to understand businesses because we read a lot about it in papers, and we generally understand that better than maybe research, because we have not, most of us have not conducted that. So one can draw lots of parallels between setting up a new business where the entire job is left to you, and the only target that is given is the financial target of 100 crores per year of turnover in the first year. So the final target is get your PhD in 4 years. That I mean, it's equivalent to saying that your company should make 100 crores in 1 year. So research is interdisciplinary. I mean, the mechanical engineering, metallurgical engineering, aerospace, these are all artificial compartments. No problem comes with a tag that it's completely metallurgical or it's completely mechanical. So when you manufacture something, inevitably you use materials, and when you use materials, metallurgy or material science becomes inevitable. So you have material science coming in everywhere, be it mechanical, be it electrical, be it aerospace, be it anything else, where you deal with materials. So research is always interdisciplinary. Just like while setting up a company, you need some engineering understanding of engineering, you need understanding of law, you need understanding of taxation. So everything is interdisciplinary. So the reason why I'm drawing parallels with a business is that it is exactly like setting up a business. And novelty is the mandatory component, because as in case of business, you get the edge, a business edge over your competitors, right? So if you can say that the USP, unique selling point for our product is this, and that's the novelty. So novelty is a mandatory component. In case of research, it is the addition of knowledge that you do at the global level. So research is about thinking on your own. So you cannot outsource thinking. That is very important. So finding solutions that are based on sound logical footing. So whether something is correct or not, since there is no model answer, now the question is whether a solution is correct or not. The solution is likely to be correct or is likely to be acceptable if it is based on a sound logical footing. So again, you do a market survey, you find out whether product will sell or not. Well, whether the results of the survey are right or wrong will be determined only when you make the product and try to sell it into the market. Till then, as long as your market review is based on a sound footing, sound methodology, it is most likely that your product will sell. So the market research and market survey gives you a likelihood that the product will be sold. Being able to defend the methodologies used, that is another thing. Unlike, I mean, in a business, when you go for a loan, they will ask you, what are you going to do? Why this? Why that? So you have to defend your plans. So similarly, the research methodology which you are going to adopt has to be defendable, and therefore, once it is based on some sound logical footing, you will be able to defend that with confidence. So it is about convincing yourself about your research problem, research solution first, then you convince your guide, then you convince the doctoral committee or whatever progress monitoring committee which is there in the university, and then after that you try to convince the examiner who is sitting outside the institute, an external examiner, and then finally you get your degree. So the stages of convincing go from from yourself to others. So the first thing is you should be convinced about your own research, about your own research problem, and that is the reason why you need to think of it yourself and find solutions which are soundly founded on logic. And then you should not be afraid of scrutiny. So you should not try to sweep things under the carpet. So if you find something going wrong or something not being right, you need to start thinking of course corrections, or you need to investigate why something went haywire, rather than sweep it under the carpet saying that, okay, this is not within the scope. In fact, one student wrote a paper and sent it to me for review. Sir, what do you think about this? Then I gave my comments. Then everything I wrote as needed for improving the quality, he used to say it's beyond the scope of this paper. Okay? He would say that it's not in the scope of this paper. Then I said, what is it that is the scope of the paper? Because there was no substance left in it. So if you try to sweep things under the carpet, this is what happens one after the other. Lots of things which you have put in your research get swept out because you are not able to stand up to scrutiny. So standing up to scrutiny and defending your work is an extremely important part of your research, and that is the reason why, again, your solutions should be of your own. Because let's say if you have plagiarized something, then okay, up to plagiarizing it is very pleasant for you, but then when you start defending that, it is extremely difficult to defend what somebody else has thought, or it is extremely difficult to defend what questions which could have been answered by somebody else, and you don't even know that somebody else from whom you have plagiarized things. So it is important to understand what is not research. First thing is do as directed type of approach. That is, okay, I had a student who used to, okay, sir, I have done this. Now you tell me what is to be done. What do the results indicate? No, I have got the results, but what to do with it is your problem. Okay, so he would give me the set of results to interpret. Then I would tell him, okay, do this. He would do this. Sir, I have done this. Now what to do next? That is not research, because you need to think about it yourself. So thinking is the basic component of research, which is mandatory. It starts before research and ends after research, and it never ends, in fact. So if you have not been thinking, you start thinking, and then only your research can begin, if at all. So a dual-directed approach appears easy, but it's more difficult because you don't know where you are getting. You don't know the direction, and you don't even know whether you are going to reach your objective or not. So you have to be the brain behind your research and not the supervisor. Taking shortcuts, fudging data, who's going to make out one is innocent until proven guilty, and so on. It doesn't help you because you are not going to be able to defend, or you are not going to be able to stand up to scrutiny. So it's an extremely important component of your research. So, and then, जो तुमको हो पसंद वही बात कहेंगे. Jaspal Bhatti had a full episode on PhD. So, pleasing the guide and the boss. The objective of PhD is not to please the guide and the boss. In fact, you can have arguments, you can have disagreements with your guide. If the guide is not able to withstand disagreements, it is not worth working with such a guide. Let me tell you that. So the student should be able to disagree with the guide, be able to discuss things with the guide, and sort out issues, academic issues, based on sound scientific discussion, sound scientific reasoning. So this way, there is learning both ways. In fact, as a guide, I also learn many things. The student also learns many things from whatever he or she does. So it's an important thing that your objective is not to please the guide or your boss. It is not to try to match your results with what is published in the literature. In fact, many times it has so happened that the student has proved that guide's theories are wrong. He has found it out. But then, if a guide is open, then he will have a discussion, unprejudiced discussion with the student, and build over whatever shortcomings, because every theory has got its own shortcomings, and research is required in order to overcome those shortcomings. So it's not that once something has been said, it is the last word in that subject. So one should remember that research continues only because last word can neither be said by you nor by me on the subject, progress is always possible. So let's see what constitutes research finally. So addition to existing status of knowledge at the global level. So what you don't know, you came to know, does not mean that you have done research. It is just that your information has got updated. But then at global level, people were not able to understand certain things, and then they have been understood. So that is what solution to an existing problem of general interest is. I will give you some examples as we go along. Overcome limitations of human capabilities by application of laws of physics. For example, let's say something, you want to generate a phenomenon which occurs on Earth, you want to generate the same thing in space. What would happen in space? How do you go about overcoming the issues which will arise in space? You want to grow fruits and vegetables in space. How would you do that? So some of these things require research. So you have limitations of human capabilities which have to be overcome by using laws of physics. Many times in many companies, in fact, people who are not working in R&D of any company or any organization do research by finding out solutions to their problems in the shop floor, and then they successfully implement it, resulting in savings of crores of rupees for the company. So that is also research, because the research thinking and research methodology would have gone into it. So who should do research? Having understood what research means, who should do research? The person who genuinely pursues research. So if I just want to get a degree like a share certificate, which I take around and try to encash it for better salary or better prospects, he is not fit for research. Because what he will do is, he will not add anything to the knowledge, but he will give an impression that he has done research. So we want people who really do research and not give an impression of having done research. So a person who genuinely pursues research will come out with some genuine conclusions or genuine outcomes, rather than a person who does research only for administrative purposes of getting, of a narrow view of getting a promotion or getting something. As I said, use a PhD degree like a share certificate. Let's be an objective thinker. The person who thinks objectively is important, because when the person becomes a guide, he will also be able to guide properly. So if you are able to do a good PhD, a genuine PhD, you will also be able to guide genuine researchers. So you will not support plagiarism. In fact, there have been situations where the project report of one researcher was submitted by somebody else as his own PhD thesis. Just change the first page and that's it. And many QIP scholars tell me about easy ways of doing PhD. अरे यार 30 साल पहले का thesis उठा लो, first page बदल दो, submit कर दो, कौन देखता है, right? So that is not the PhD what we are talking about. So one has to be an objective thinker, an independent thinker, and once you are this, then you will not support such shortcuts to a PhD. The person who goes deep into the problem does a why analysis. So this once Japanese start doing it, we think that it's very important, but this is something that has always to be done. So Japanese have given a lot of prestige to many of these thinking processes like Kaizen and that is continuous improvement and this why analysis. So at least since it has got some prestige thanks to the Japanese, let us follow it in our research. And the courage to experiment is important, because you need the courage to fail. Everything will not, in research there is 50% possibility of success and failure. If you have done a sound literature review, if your thinking is sound, then the likelihood of failure is reduced proportionally. But in spite of everything, you might end up with failure for reasons which are unexplained, because based on your research of reading literature, based on your experience of talking to people, getting information from reliable sources, it may not explain the reason why the things failed. So then it may require separate understanding of why your experiment failed or why your research failed. So there has to be a courage to experiment, and even if you fail, you should not get dejected. So there has to be a mental framework, mental makeup, so that you stand up to you stand up to failure. So supposing you are unable to stand up to scrutiny, supposing, in fact, there have been cases where a person had genuinely derived a result mathematically himself. Unfortunately, the paper went to a mathematician and he found flaws with the mathematical treatment. The engineer doing mathematics and a mathematician doing mathematics are two different things. And then he went on and blasted that guy through the reviewer's comments. Now, as far as he is concerned, it's a failure and it's very an unfortunate situation. But then, being able to stand to this requires a certain mental tenacity and the tenacity to go forward and give a reply to the mathematician or to give a reply to the reviewer. So it's an important aspect of a researcher's mindset. Creative thinking. I mentioned out of the box thinking. So creative thinking is something that is required. So thinking first and then creative thinking is specifically. Now creativity is mostly misunderstood by many people. For example, let's say a student makes a mistake in solving a problem, right? A student takes the direction of gravity wrongly. Instead of downward, he takes the direction of gravity as upward, for example. Is it a mistake or is it creativity? Is it innovation or is it a mistake? Now the question is, I mean, for a student who wants to defend it will claim that he has been innovative and in showing the direction upwards, and or if you assume that sun rises from the west and do all your calculations accordingly and come up with some results, is it innovation or is it a mistake? So anything that conflicts with known things, any assumption or anything that conflicts with known things is to be treated as a mistake. So if you make some wrong assumptions and then build your research around it, obviously the consequences are going to be wrong. So what is wrong and what is right has to be decided in light of what has been already established. So your research cannot be a disjoint set with respect to whatever is known. It has to have its roots in whatever is known and whatever is already established by fellow researchers who have been working earlier. Again, as I have emphasized courage to experiment, and no two PhDs can be compared. Like I mean, if you start comparing again, it can be a cause for dejection. So, as long as your research methodology, as long as your reasoning is on a sound scientific footing, you don't have to worry about the differences between what you are getting and what somebody else has got, because as long as what you have done is defendable, not on lame excuses or not on lame reasoning, but on very sound scientific reasoning, you don't have to worry about anything. So how does one perform research? I have generally given you the steps. When you first you identify the problem, define the problem, review the literature on the current status and set objectives, then formulate approaches, because there can be lots of things to be done, but then within the short period of time, you need to formulate an objective which you need to achieve before you get your PhD. Pursue the chosen approach and then explain your results in light of known facts and then draw conclusions which would be useful for the society in general. So how do you do literature review? You use a rich source of literature like patents or Scopus.com, which contains a rich compilation of patents, papers and reports, theses and many other things. The most important thing which most PhD students don't do is reading papers critically. After reading a lot, one may conclude that everything that is worth doing has been done, so there is nothing left for me to do, and therefore I must change my topic. So every now and then the student will come to the guide saying that, sir, I think I will take something else. Read that. Again find that so much has been done that there is again nothing left for me, and therefore hop from topic to topic, and even after 1 year the person is not sure whether there is anything to be done, anything worth doing. So reading papers critically enables you to find out gaps. This is what students do with teachers. They look at the teacher very critically. अरे यार इसको ऐसा बताने से वो off देता है class. So they look at the teacher very critically, his behavior very critically. If you write like this, he gives you full mark. But if you write like that, the same point written a different way, he cuts 2 marks. So this is how although the teacher is respected and seen as perfect in the subject, still the students look at him very critically. So same way you have to look at the papers very critically. Has he made a mistake somewhere, or is his reasoning correct? Many times people think that anything that is printed has to be right. So people believe that many wrong things get printed. In fact, I read a paper by V.M. Sehgal, with whom the technology to make ultra-fine grain materials started. So he had developed a technology of reducing the grain size of materials to sub-micron size levels using severe plastic deformation. So after lots of back and forth theories were propagated by many, he wrote a paper saying that I have been reading so many theories going back and forth about the development of these ultrafine grains, and they add more to confusion than clarity, and therefore I would like to clarify certain things. And so he wrote a paper to say what was right and what was wrong. So it is possible that so many papers which are published on theories differing with each other are not always right. Many wrong things get published as well. So you need to put down what has been already done and where research contribution is required, what you agree with and what you disagree with. So first thing is you should not be afraid of disagreeing. So because in many universities where research is hierarchical, मैं देखता हूँ उसको, he is challenging me. So that's the kind of approach which many take, and that is the approach which kills research. So the approach has to be an open-minded approach. As to you have to listen to what the other guy is saying. You should have your own reasons to say why he's right or why he's wrong, and then evaluate in light of that, rather than using your status as a researcher in the university. Formulate a tentative topic. Let's say I'm going to work on sheet metal forming, but what about sheet metal forming I still don't know. So I read papers on sheet metal forming, various aspects of sheet metal forming, like it is used for making car bodies. What are the problems in making car bodies, assembling them? What are the issues in getting the component itself right? What are the problems in addressing thickness variations which are inevitable in a component? So I try to look at various aspects in sheet metal forming, and then what do we mean by addition to the existing status of knowledge? So now I'm coming to the examples of whatever I was talking about. Explanations to phenomena unexplained so far. Why are suddenly droughts coming? Or why are desert areas receiving more rain? Why do you see more trees coming up in the deserts, and areas where there used to be rain many years back are now receiving no rain? Better understanding of existing problems. Those solutions, you may not find solutions, but you can develop an understanding of the problem and suggest directions to solve them, probably. So effect of microwave radiation. There is always a debate whether mobiles are good for health or not. And deeper understanding of existing problems, like effect of microwave radiation or effect of having certain kinds of foodstuffs, for example. We read very weird conclusions which have been drawn, where people say that having a banana a day is good for longevity and so on. And when you look at the experiments which were conducted, they sound far from convincing. Although the details may not be given in the newspapers, but then when you read the gist of it, you find them hardly convincing. So it is important to have a deeper understanding of what constitutes the adverse effects, if at all they are. And then similarly, the occurrence of Nipah virus. Very recently there was talk about Nipah virus. It is said that Nipah virus had occurred many years back as well. So now the question is the same Nipah virus which occurred several years back, or is it a different strain? Has there been mutation over the years? How does Nipah virus survive? How could it survive for so many years? These are some of the issues which need to be thought of, like eradication of polio. One still doubts whether it has been eradicated or not, but then people claim that it has been eradicated over so many decades. It has been a planned program, and at least people are able to claim now that it has been eradicated, although the facts may be, well, one has to look at facts very critically. So the research outcomes, we are interested in research outcomes, what has come out of a PhD finally, right? And that has a bearing on the topic you have selected. So it can be accidental. I mean, topic is selected deliberately, but the research outcome can be accidental. Accidental meaning an unintended outcome. So supposing you had started off in one direction, on the way you might find that you are able to solve more problems than what you had looked for. For example, when I thought of making an IC engine, a car engine out of sheet metal, we made piston, we made connecting rod, now we are making the engine block out of sheet metal. So our idea was to reduce the weight. So the car weight has to be reduced, and therefore the engine block when made by sheet metal will be lighter. But now we also realize that the energy input for making the piston and the connecting rod is much lower than the energy input using traditional processes. So this is unintended direction of research. Like, we never thought that we would be getting this. So you get lots of unintended, and you have to look for them. I mean, till recently we were not looking for the energy inputs, but then we started looking at benefits to, because what people told us, okay, if you make a car lighter, the user is benefiting, because why should the manufacturer make it light? Because what is the benefit to the manufacturer? He will go by a cheaper process. So now the benefit to the manufacturer is that he is spending less on energy, because he has to pay for the energy that is going to be used, and by virtue of that, it is benefit to the manufacturer as well. So now the possibility of the manufacturer agreeing to resort to the lightweighting steps is much better. Novel methods, novel applications. So it doesn't have to be like a problem of current status. Supposing you realize in your masters or during a coursework that certain mathematical method has got some limitations, and you have found some way of overcoming those limitations. इसको ऐसे solve करने से you get the solution much quicker, or maybe a much more accurate solution. Naturally, you would employ that novel method, and then you can start looking for the application. So it can be a theoretical problem as well, which might arise from your experience or from your reading or from your studies which have happened so far. You look at better quality of life. Quality of life means, what is better quality of life? What is quality of life? What do you define as quality of life? Are you having good quality of life? How will you tell that? I'm not linked to the mobile radiation. So these are different topics which are unrelated. Effect of micro radiation on human health, changes in climate across the world, cures for cancer, occurrence and spread of Nipah virus. These are all examples where a deeper understanding is required. Okay, so you want to understand whether it is safe or not. So then you have to devise an experiment to find out how safe a mobile radiation is. And that you have to have a guide who is competent to guide you. As a person in sheet metal forming, I cannot guide you on these experiments on mobile radiation and things like that, because I myself don't understand much about the mobile radiation. There are people in electrical engineering department in our institute who understand mobile radiations much better, who have worked with them. Yes, yeah, of course. Yes, we have a huge range of topics in which you can receive guidance from IIT Bombay within one single roof. So, drought, unseasonal rains, these are all topics which need explanation. What I mean is, things are not really well explained. There are a lot of data which can be collected, but then different interpretations can be obtained from different sets of data. That is one. Different models, weather models have been used to predict. Recently we went to Kerala, and we found newspaper reports very scary, because they said that there is going to be torrential rain and people have been advised to keep away from water bodies, flash flooding can take place and so on and so forth. So we were wondering whether we should go for sightseeing at all. But then we said, okay, let us try our luck. We went and the entire day was sunny. So what I mean is, I'm not trying to demean anybody, but then the predictions are based on weather models. You have some model which are derived from the data, and once in a while the prediction might go wrong, which was good for us because it stood in our favor. But then tomorrow you can as well get stuck. So if it turns out to be right, so the point is that once in a while the predictions may go wrong, and models are the ones which don't guarantee 100% fit all the time. R square equal to 99.99 is what we are looking for. But then it also means that at some points it's not going to give you the right prediction. So R square equal to 1 is never possible in weather predictions. So that's the point. So what it means is that when you're working with analysis, when you're working with models and predictions based on models, there is going to be a difference between an actual situation and that, and the research is required to minimize the difference between the prediction and and reality, right? The prediction and reality, people do more vigorous research on share prices because it directly impacts on the pocket. You develop models on how the share prices are going to move, and accordingly you bid for a different share, buying or selling. So people are more conscious of that research because it directly impinges on your pockets. Either you lose money or you benefit from that. So you want a model for shares which everybody implicitly develops. Nobody wants a degree in that, but everybody implicitly develops that model and continues using it. One model may be better than the other, and so one man may be getting richer than the other. So that is what we mean by research, model development, etc. So what is quality of life? Many of you have chosen to live for a better quality of life outside the auditorium. Yes. So correct. So absolutely. So if all your needs are satisfied as and when they arise, then you have good quality of life. See, you want the quality of life. See, whatever needs you have, correct. See, the lots of things which are harmful around you, but then when your needs don't get satisfied, let's say you go to a village, you don't have an ATM, you don't have many facilities, and then you say the quality of life is very poor. The reason being that the needs are not satisfied the way they arise. For example, you want to buy something at 8 o'clock in the evening, you find the shops closed in a village, but here shops are open till midnight. You are used to shops being open till midnight, but you said, "Arey yaar, Mumbai mein kitna acha tha." Very good quality of life because you can satisfy your need as and when they arise. IIT Bombay has now set up a team to look at disruptions, a team which will look at power outages or water not coming, and they work overnight. So earlier it used to be that if you complain today evening, because the working hours are over, tomorrow the problem can be solved. But now there is a team which works overnight. So it's not that it will be solved tomorrow, it will be solved today and within the next few hours. So then the quality of life at IIT Bombay is much better than others, right? So the quality of life is something that depends upon the need getting satisfied within a reasonable period of time. Faster the need is satisfied, the better it is, right? So earlier we used to have accessibility to emails on computers. Now that you have got accessibility on mobiles, we don't have the patience to go to the office and check them. So gradually the need is being satisfied instantaneously as it arises. So the lead time between the arising of the need and its fulfillment is continuously decreasing. So that is where the research is. I mean, the whole research effort over the years has resulted in the need being satisfied almost instantaneously, right? In fact, people are driving towards satisfying the need before it arises. So you preempt it and then you have the solution ready. Correct. So this is where the research is moving towards better quality of life. And as you said, cleaner environment. Clean. What is clean? It is not clean of particulate matter only. It is clean of microwave or radiations which are harmful to human beings. So, but then you want a mobile and you want clean environment, clean of mobiles. Radiation, that is not possible. When people banned plastic bags, people were used to so much. Nobody even today goes to the market with a bag in his hand. People assume that the bag is going to be available, and only when you reach the shop and they tell you that, look, no plastic with us, we can give you at best a newspaper, wrap something in the newspaper and give you. Then it dawns upon you that, oh, now I can't carry anything back home. So the plastic bags have become so much of a convenience, a means of convenience, a part of quality or so-called quality of life, that a ban on plastic bags for cleaner environment. You want cleaner environment, but you want plastic bags. So there are lots of conflicting issues here. You want mobiles, but no microwave radiation. Both are not possible. You want microwave heating, but no microwave radiation. Not possible, right? So these are some of the conflicts, again, which need to be resolved. Well, it is possible that there are solutions to it, but then one has to do deep thinking and do research to resolve those conflicts. Yeah, so similarly, you need energy efficient, cost efficient solutions, and so on. So there are a few examples of research outcomes which could possibly benefit mankind. You have good process control, a robust process. What is a robust process? Where the input is widely varying, output is the same. Output is, there is hardly any variation in output. So what it means is that, let's say in terms of a robust grading system, students, there is wide variation in the answers, but everybody gets full marks. A robust grading system. Irrespective of the answer given, full marks are given. That's robustness, right? So wide variation in input, no variation in output. Improved technologies, new materials, of course, these are things which are dear to all engineers and technologists. And when we work with technologies, we work on materials, and therefore material science and metallurgy is a part and parcel of everything. Now the question is, how does manufacturer achieve consistent quality despite inconsistent quality of inputs? Because you are hiring people from various colleges. There is a lot of differences among the quality of students, but still you want the company to run with the same efficiency or to retain its name, or maybe advance, go ahead in terms of profits. How do you do that? So this is something which needs, so you need strategies for getting this kind of robustness. So you need certain steps like deciding on quality parameters, list out the processing steps which affect the quality parameters, and then control those within very tight tolerance limits, so that in spite of large variations in the input, you can still expect very small variation in the output. So then finally you end up with a multidimensional playing zone, an operating zone, which is in the form of an envelope, in which if the operating points lie within that control volume, then you can have an acceptable output, otherwise not. So final output of this research would be that you have a variation, or a band of variation which is permissible on various control parameters, which would lead to an acceptable outcome. Other research objectives include cost cutting by reducing material input, reducing rejections, reducing wastage, reduce energy input. When Japanese called wastage muda, we perk our ears and say, oh, that's one of the Japanese techniques of enhancing productivity. But it has always been there, and reducing wastage is a part and parcel of the production activity. Reduce energy input, enhance functionality without compromising on the performance of the product. So all these cost reductions have to be enforced without compromising on the functionality. So this is what we call as value engineering. So we enhance the value of the product by keeping the functionality the same and reducing the inputs, reducing rejections, reducing wastage, and so on. So this is called as value engineering, where we have either you increase the value at a increased cost input, or you have the value the same but your cost input is reduced. So techniques to find solutions include, again, if you take an unsolvable PhD problem, then you will be neither here nor there. That's why it is important. So it is important to see the entire process of PhD at the time of selection of problem itself. So it is like a designer. If you make a product which is not manufacturable and not saleable, you are going to get stuck. So that is the reason why it is important to understand the entire course of your PhD right at the time of deciding the problem itself. So if you follow some of these steps, like you compose or you synthesize the problem statement based on whatever you have read, or construct the contents of the problem, what you are going to, or define the problem. So you are constructing the definition based on whatever you have read. Okay, you create a solution, or you create an experimental plan of how you are going to get the data. I mean, everything may not be available in literature, everything may not be available from previous experiences. So you need to do some experiments, you need to generate some data yourself, because your thesis has to be based on two things: facts and figures. So the facts are known a priori, are generated by yourself, and figures can also be taken from reliable sources of literature or generated by yourself. So then you ask yourself these questions. हमें एक सवाल पूछने की आदत है, जवाब देने की नहीं. That is not acceptable here. You have to ask the question and answer them yourself first, and then only you can expect answers from others. Bring out novel solutions, and there are various steps of bringing out novel solutions which we see in common life. In other words, research enables enhancement of knowledge. Novelty is mandatory, and honest perseverance is required for a successful researcher. And now we come to the point of problem definition. Okay, so we have understood the research, and we know that we need to view the research in totality and rather than as a piecemeal thing. So just as a businessman cannot be happy with just identification of product, chalo main ye banane wala hu, without knowing how he is going to make it and where is he going to make it, whom he is going to sell it to, the problem definition is not complete. So we need to know the problem and set its limits. For example, you are developing a CAD software to extract features from a product. Features could be of various kinds. Now, to limit the problem to a tractable one, you limit the types of features to the symmetric features or axisymmetric features, or maybe cylindrical features, polygonal features. So you describe the kinds of features your software is going to extract. Otherwise, the problem will become so huge and so untractable that you will never come out with a solution to it. Economic performance prediction of enterprises, for example, is a huge problem, because even a World Bank may have several people working on it. I mean, whether it is to be done at global level, whether it is going to be done at national level, state level, local level, district level, what? You have to localize the problem, or you are going to do it for small and medium industries, or whether it's going to be for what kind of software companies, for example. So these things have to be defined, and you should limit the scope of your work. So in the problem definition, your playground has to be defined, the boundaries. What is the boundary? Beyond which line can you give a 6? Which one, what is the definition of the boundary which will define a 4? So these are things which have to be defined first. So the approaches are, you start with an application. You first start with an application, do literature survey. Like I told you, you want to start a business. That's an application. And then you start getting literature, getting whatever information you possibly can get, talking to people, getting experiences, and then start. One is recycling of shop floor scrap without melting. You take a lot of scrap from the shop floor and recycle. We are doing that. So we take shop floor scrap, so titanium, aluminum, these are the materials where the cost differential between the virgin material and the shop floor scrap is extremely large. Titanium is available as a virgin material at 3,000, 4,000 rupees a kilo, whereas as a scrap it is 50 rupees or 100 rupees a kilo. So that's the kind of difference it makes. So if you take such scrap and then process it into products directly without melting, there's enormous savings in terms of cost and energy. So your profitability also goes up and excellent value addition takes place. So we are doing that with these non-ferrous materials. So we have been able to form sheets out of say aluminum scrap and draw them into cups as well, so that we know that the sheet that has been formed out of chips or out of scrap is really a usable one. As I told you, lightweighting of IC engines by making them out of sheet metal. The cleaning blockages from drains is another problem which is of social nature. Like you have manholes which are connected by pipes of 150 mm diameter, and that is where the drain gets blocked. Now it will be of great relevance in Mumbai particularly, right? When the high tide comes, the drains starts overflowing because at many times they are blocked. So now the Safai Karmacharis have to get into the drains and clean them, and for them it's a very hazardous situation. So now how can you help in conceptualizing a solution to clean those drains without involvement of human beings directly into it? So you need to conceptualize, build a solution, demonstrate it, build a science around it, and explain the solution in scientific terms. So there are three components to the research which we have in our lab. One is novelty, second one is its value or an application, and third one is science. So there are three vertices of a triangle, and all three are equally important. So problem identification can be done based on a prevalent situation, like the need to clean blockages in the drains. BMC makes many times announcement that everything is fine, but then after the rains come, the drains themselves tell you how fine things are. Fast charging batteries for electric vehicles. Electric vehicles are coming, but the one impediment is batteries take a lot of time to charge. The time for filling petrol at a petrol pump may be 5 minutes, but charging of a battery takes maybe one full shift, 8 hours, right? So these are things which need research because you see them coming, you see the situation developing. So it's important to develop a solution before the problem has arisen. Through social awareness created by various forms of media, like I was talking about Nipah virus and so on, and many other mobile radiation, etc. So social awareness created by many forms of media, newspapers, TVs, magazines, articles, and so on. The second approach is to begin with science. Like you have found that some law has some limitations, and you want to overcome those limitations. You have found ways and means to, or you have found situations in which the law doesn't work, and then you would like to find out which law really works in that particular situation. So then you would start working on study the physics of the problem, and then see why the law doesn't work and what would work if you either tweak the law or make a fresh law yourself so that it works. So you develop a hypothesis, rebuild models, and verify them experimentally. And after having done this, the last step is look for applications. Like one of my colleagues says that you have a solution, and then you are trying to find out what the problem could possibly be. So you have a medicine, and then you try to find out which disease it can cure, right? So that's what it amounts to. But then you know that some limitations have to be overcome, and you do that. Third approach is work on supervisors' ideas, most pleasant part. Because problem is readily available, not a minute has to be spent. But then it is not do as directed area of research. I mean, you may think that it's a pleasant thing. The supervisor, your idea is what I'm trying out. Now you tell me what I'm supposed to do because I have no idea what you think, right? So you better give me directions and I will carry them out. I will give you results. You do whatever you want with them. You tell me what I want to do next because ideas are all yours. It is not to be looked that way. You have to use the idea of the supervisor's starting point, but then you need to develop over it yourself by looking at literature, looking into magazines or articles which you might have, which may come from reliable sources. So thorough reading of literature is important, and you need to have your own opinion in this case. Because many times you may go halfway through your PhD and find that you disagree with ideas of your guide. Because you have been working on the supervisor's ideas, but then over a period of time you have developed disagreement with them. What do you do in that case? You can neither go forward nor backward. You are in trouble, right? So it's important that you develop your own opinion based on thorough research on it and formulate your problem and discuss this with your guide. So you need to frankly discuss it with the supervisor, what you agree with, what you don't agree with, change the topic in time, so that if you disagree with your supervisor's ideas, you change the topic, you say that this is what I'm going to work on and be done with it. So you review the literature and set objectives, review it critically, I have already mentioned that, and then identify the playing field and narrow it down if it is too general or too vast. It's just like it is very difficult to say how much money is enough. If I ask you whether 1 lakh rupees a month is enough, whether is 1.5 lakhs is enough, or 50,000 is enough for a month, very difficult to answer the question. Similarly, whether a given problem can be done in 2 years, whether it will take 4 years, whether it can be done in 5 years, difficult to say. But as you go along, as you make progress, you might want to narrow down the scope of the problem, and therefore it's not like a once through process. Like you cannot just decide one direction. It's not a point to point type of a service. So you need to be realistic in defining the problem. You need to assess whether it is possible to do it within the available facilities or not. In fact, when I started my PhD, we didn't have too many facilities in our lab, but my guide was very resourceful. He had lots of contacts outside the IIT, and we visited many institutions to conduct experiments and come back with results. But then that is something which was possible because we had facilities in other institutions which we could use. But then it is extremely risky to choose a problem which is not tractable without serving the facilities available which can be put to use. So funding, the extent to which the department and can support financially. One student came to me saying that, sir, I want to work on powder metallurgy of platinum. So why platinum? Can you not work with aluminum? No, sir. I have read papers on platinum. Therefore, I want to do powder metallurgy of platinum. What is the cost of platinum powder? Extremely expensive. But we can't afford to do it. So he was trying to find an excuse to say that, look, I am a sincere student. But department could not afford my experiment. Therefore, I could not complete my work. So he wanted to be lazy. He was a lazy guy. But then he didn't want the blame on him. He wanted a means to blame the department. Well, you get me that powder, I'll do it. But you are not able to afford it. So what can I do about it? Simple. So one has to be wary about these situations and avoid. I mean, you will do a PhD and guide somebody else. So that's what I am sharing with you. So it's extremely important to discuss with your supervisor and keep discussing with your guide from time to time. And you have to do your homework before, you can't go blank. You have to, so you need to identify bottlenecks and practical difficulties which may arise and nip them in the bud right in the beginning. So some do's and don'ts while selecting the PhD problem. I'm coming to the end of my presentation. I have just a couple of slides more, I think. So do discuss your work with your guide from time to time, because course corrections are required from time to time and they have to be done with the guide's approval. So it's important to discuss the formulation of the problem and when you pursue its solution, you need to keep discussing with the guide. Take along results from time to time. The guide always likes to see results from you. It gives an evidence that you are working on something. In fact, if a student does not have a discussion at least once a week, he is doing nothing. Be sure of it. So if the student has done serious work, he is sincere, and yet he has nothing to discuss for 1 week, he has been on holiday, nothing else. Okay? So every student who really is pursuing research, putting in the effort, will always have something or other to discuss with you. I mean, he will never stop himself from coming to you. In fact, he may want to meet you more frequently than once per week. Research is not once through process. That is another thing. Do work independently. Very frequent meetings with the supervisor is also a problem, because the supervisor doesn't like to meet you too often. He will like to meet you with some good news. But if you keep taking your problems to him all the time, then he might start having second thoughts, right? So you have to take some good news to the supervisor from time to time. It's not that you are, sir, ye nahi mil raha hai, wo nahi ho raha hai, sir, can you help me this way? Yes, once in a while, supervisor will be glad to do it. But then if nothing other than this happens, then obviously the supervisor will have to think. Do not choose a problem working on which is not easily feasible, because you are ready to work, you are putting in more energy, but most of the energy will be wasted in overcoming the problems in getting facilities or in administrative related issues. So don't work on something that is not easily feasible. Don't leave the planning of your research to the supervisor. That is a very dangerous thing. The research should be in your hands, because you are the brain behind your own research. Therefore, the planning has to be yours. Okay. So every year you may give a progress seminar and so on, and so the responsibility of showing progress is with you. So the planning of the research should be with you. So outsourcing of anything is a very dangerous thing. Don't try to somehow show exact matching of your results with the published ones, because you may be very happy, look, my results are exactly matching with them, so acceptability is taken for granted. But now the question is, what is new? Already this has been done, so what is aapne kaun sa tir mara hai na? Why should you be given a PhD? So that kind of question will arise. So naturally, it is important that the objective of the thesis is not to match your results with what somebody else has done or what somebody else has published. So many people get dejected saying that, sir, I am getting these values, but somebody else has got those and my values are very far compared to that. Now what do I do? Well, you defend your values. I mean, it's not your responsibility to defend somebody else's research. It's not your responsibility to match your value with somebody else's values. He could have been wrong too. I mean, just because somebody has published something doesn't mean that he is right. As long as you have done things in a right manner, using right procedure, with sound scientific footing, you don't have to worry about what others have done and what others have got. So in the phase of problem definition, many times these impediments are realistic, in the sense that your linguistic capability needs to be strengthened. Many people write the thesis in Hindi. I mean the language uses English, but then the whole expression is Hindi. So then you can't make out what the student really means by writing that. So you need to, if English is the medium of instruction, so if you have to write your thesis in English, then you need to know sufficient English so that you can write English which is understood by you as well as your guide, and then by your examiner as well. So the English you write has to be understood at a global level and not by yourself. And strengthen the capability of technical writing. There are a good number of books which are available on technical writing, so you can prepare yourself for thesis writing at the problem selection phase itself. So many people say that we will come to the bridge and cross it, but this is the bridge which you cannot cross after having completed your research and when you are going to write your final thesis. You can't start learning a language and then start writing it. So that's the suggestion to you. And now I summarize, saying that problem definition phase should involve due considerations to everything that is involved until attainment of the set research objective. So you set a research objective. So everything that occurs en route to your final PhD thesis, final writing of your thesis, has to be visualized and the problem defined is consistent with that. Problem definition can be nucleated by various factors which I have already discussed, examples of which have already been given. A thorough literature review brings out what has been done, what is yet to be done, needs to be done, and what you should be doing. So these are 4 different questions and they should not be confused as synonymous with each other. Novelty and addition to knowledge at a global level is a mandatory part of the problem definition. It can so happen. So if you have a marginal addition, this has happened to some students I know of. If you have a marginal addition to your to the existing status of knowledge, then it can so happen that over the 5 years you take for your PhD, somebody else has already done it, published it, and therefore your PhD is gone, because then you are not the first one to do it, right? So the knowledge addition has to be of substantial level, so that, because you have to understand that like you, many other researchers are working across the globe and they could be working on the same problem. So if somebody else publishes the same result, you are not getting your PhD. So halfway through, if this happens, whatever work you had done is not novel. I mean, it's no longer research which deserves a PhD. So it is very important that you choose a topic or choose a problem which is really novel. Your approach is, deviates from whatever has already been done very significantly, not a marginal change in parameters here and there. And then, like there was a comment in one of the serials that प्रोफेसर का मतलब क्या है, दो चार लफ्ज इधर को उधर कर दिया, बन गया नया एडिशन, है ना. व्हेन प्रोफेसर राइट बुक्स, पिछले एडिशन में दो चार लफ्ज इधर के उधर कर दिए. सो इफ यू डू दैट, सच मार्जिनल वेरिएशन इन योर research topic, it's very likely that somebody else might overtake you and beat you to it. So be careful while selecting the project topic, because it's a huge part of your PhD. So thank you very much for your patience, and thank you for understanding. Yes, any questions you might have? Yeah.
So I asked the similar question to Patwardhan sir also.
Yeah.
When the first part of this was going on. So we are coming from an institute where there are not many facilities.
Yes.
If we try to develop the facilities, we cannot go to the extent where institutes like IITs are at present working on.
Correct.
Okay. We also don't have the access to so many journals. So we are, whenever we do literature survey, we have a limited literature survey only.
Correct.
Okay. So when we start working on a topic, whatever has been done globally is far more beyond our capabilities.
Yes.
So then how do we go forward doing our research? Because if we try to do something which has not been done, it's actually almost impossible for us.
No, it is not true, because see, IIT allows you to come here and do literature review. So the accessibility to rich literature across the globe, which will give you a global perspective of research topics, is there for you. So that's not a problem. Now, having facilities at your end it can be a bottleneck. Now, I also suffered this. I also had the same problem. Like I came from IIT Madras, where labs are very well equipped, and when I came to IIT Bombay, in my field, the lab was not so well equipped, and we didn't have facilities. But then that taught me to think within the limitations of, because if you go on thinking in a divergent manner, then you might find things impossible. But
The point is, somebody who is pursuing a PhD has sufficient time for
Yes.
this thing. But somebody who is doing a master's degree
yes,
at an institute like ours,
correct,
okay, that student will be somebody who has not been admitted to any IIT.
Correct.
Or any LIT. That is why he is coming to our college.
Right.
So he also has a limited knowledge. Okay. Now when he starts working there, he has a fixed time in which he is supposed to complete his master's degree. So sometimes they have certain financial limitations also, where they cannot like move around, do certain things, and there is a limitation of knowledge also. So in that case,
correct.
kindly suggest us something like what should be our field of working, where we can go
Right, so-
and add something to what is happening. Otherwise, what happens? We find the research, we try to replicate the research at our end, and then
Get a PhD for
we
it.
do something. But
Yeah.
it's not like it hasn't been done anywhere else.
See, you are now talking about an MTech student who will do an aspect of your research problem. Let's say you are getting your research done through some MTech students. Let's say when an MTech student looks at one aspect of the problem which you have undertaken, now he is also allowed to come to IIT and do literature survey, because if you want the literature survey to be done to be of certain quality, it will always help him to come here, do the literature survey and go back. Now, as for the facilities, the issue is whether you should spend your life in setting up a facility, or should you use existing facilities to constructive means. Now, setting up facilities is a long drawn process which requires funding and which requires external support. So depending on what is available to you at what point of time, you keep on incrementally augmenting your facilities. That is one. For example, instead of buying experimental facility setups, you fabricate them yourself. So what is available for 2 lakhs can be made in 20,000. In fact, one of my PhD students fabricated so many setups. In fact, in one of the powder metallurgy conferences, there were stalls of many companies, and they were selling those same machines for some 5 lakhs, 2 lakhs, and so on, which he made here for 20,000 and 50,000 rupees. So fabrication of your own setups helps you a lot and saves a lot of money. So it can be faster as well. That is one. Another thing is, if you need some high-end facilities, sophisticated facilities, IITs have like SAI, sophisticated analytical instrumentation facility, where not only IIT but people outside also are allowed to use them. So in fact, they are invited to use them. So there are lots of things which IIT has for researchers outside IIT which can be used by the researchers from outside. So even so SAIF, you will be surprised that even we have to pay to use the SAIF facility. It's not free for even IIT Bombay people. Okay, so don't think that because something lies within IIT premises, we can use it freely. It is not. We also have to pay the charges. Like you will all have to pay the charges. So all of us are on par as far as the SAIF is concerned. So it is important that you know about maybe you can visit these facilities and then have them in your mind when you formulate the research problem. So I agree that facilities cannot be generated quickly, but then once you have a facility available in your purview, then you can develop a problem which is realistic as far as PhD is concerned. And MTech and PhD are two different things. PhD is not really time bound because you have to achieve a particular objective, but an MTech is time bound. The person has to get a degree within a stipulated period. So the nature of MTech research will be different compared to a PhD research. So MTech will look at solution to a small aspect of the problem under your supervision.
How okay is it what we are doing? Like we take a problem from somewhere, we try about going.
No, the problem is not from somewhere. It is not from somewhere. It is from your mind only.
Where means the research papers, we do the research papers, find that this thing is going on, then we try to formulate a similar kind of a problem, taking different data, then working on it. So exactly what we've been doing. So that is why I wanted to.
But that is the wrong way of formulation of a problem, because you take a paper and then try to replicate it, not replicate it, meaning formulate a problem by taking the different data sets and then apply the similar procedure.
It's not like different data sets. We work on a different, like if somebody has taken a variation in the angle, we try to take a variation in maybe something
else, yeah.
Like we change the parameters.
Yes.
We worked on like the formation of the structure. Like I'm from civil engineering, so we try to take a different formation of the structure.
Correct. Yeah.
But that's the only thing we are able to do.
Right. For example, see, in civil engineering, you have the problem of corrosion of these iron bars, let's say. So now the question is, how do you overcome them, or how do you eliminate those iron bars altogether? Or you have this MIVAN type of construction where the concept of rapid prototyping is used for constructing buildings at a very rapid rate. So if you want rapid production of buildings, because as a builder, building is a product for you, and if you want to make that product very fast, the MIVAN construction technology, which does not use any bricks at all, because laying bricks and using brick and mortar type of construction is labor intensive, whereas this can be highly mechanized. So now if you have some technologies developed like this is out of the box thinking. I mean, but then this is arisen out of the necessity to make construction faster. That there is a demand which you are not able to meet. The constructions are getting prolonged, and therefore new solutions have to be found. So people have developed this technology, MIVAN technology, that's a Malaysian technology, which which is now replacing everything else. So you look at problems which you perceive very critically. You don't have to read papers to find problems. Papers may describe solution to the problem, but it's important to
just tell us like what all has been done.
What has been
done in a particular place.
It tells you what has been done in the so what you should not do, it will tell you, but what you should do, it will not tell you. Yeah. Title, okay. See, the title of the thesis comes last. Okay, title never comes first. See, you write a thesis of some 200 pages. So what you have done is expressed in 200 pages. You write an abstract, you write the same thesis in 200 words. Okay, and the same thesis is written in 10 words, and that is the title. The thesis written in 10 words is the title.
Sir, I believe that PhDs are byproducts of projects. So my question is regarding research projects, those professors who are doing projects. So when we complete the project and submit to the funding agencies, the experts from various IITs, they ask for TOTs, transfer of technologies. So we are speechless at that particular time. Of course, we have a number of publications and patents, but industries are not ready to purchase because exactly we don't have innovativeness or implements, we don't have products. So I want to know from the teaching fraternity of this IIT that how to manage this TOT how you fulfill the expectations of the funding agency
Okay.
to transfer your, whether it is your consultancy projects which are reflecting your research objectives, because we are lacking in consultancy.
Right.
So I want to.
Okay, so to answer your question, it's the other way around. Actually, research projects are, the projects which you are talking about, consultancy projects and sponsored projects are incidental. They are not, in fact, a consultancy project report submitted as a PhD thesis is not research at all. It's not a PhD thesis at all. It's a incidental.
Not the theory, let us forget theory. We are looking for some other projects which are.
Correct.
Let us forget theory.
Okay, so now if you have solved a consultancy project is something where the manufacturer or the funder doesn't know how to do something and you tell him how to do it. So it doesn't have to be novel. It does not have to be, it is novel to him, but not really on a global scale. Okay, so it doesn't always have to be novel. It doesn't always have to lead to a patent or any novel solution. The only thing is that he is not able to do it, so you are able to do it. For example, a company wanted to cut cost in manufacture or wanted to reduce wastage. They were rolling plates and there was a lot of wastage taking place due to end cuts. They wanted to reduce that wastage. So we advised them on on how the wastage can be reduced. But then, yes, there was novelty in the solution we proposed, but then it doesn't always have to be a novel solution because you can always tell them different ways and means to do it. There are already patents which are available. So if you can take some solution of that type, which others are using, that also can help you. So these projects are, when you're talking about transfer of technology to a company, it has to be a genuine development and not copied from, like so many people are doing it in this way, so let me also do it that way. That doesn't take you anywhere. So can I do it better than somebody else? That is a question you have to ask. Only then you can, your technology will sell or you can transfer technology to others. So when you do research to overcome a problem, you need to generate something that is new, which is not available at a global level preferably, and then give it to the company. Then you will be able to defend the question of what is novel about the technology. At least at the national level, something is not available. For example, we are working on flashless forging, that is forging without flash. So at the current levels of production, you can save crores of rupees per year. Okay. But then it is not a new technology. It is there in America. It is there all over the world. But in India, it is not available. People are not able to supply forgings of consistent weight to the automotive companies. That is a problem. Who solves it? We have to solve it. So we work on it. So it's a development at a national level. But it is possible that we may we may stumble upon a method by which this flashless forging design can be achieved, and then therefore you may. So as I said, when you think of solutions to clean blockages in a drain, without intending to do it, you might find a methodology to design the drains in such a way that they never get blocked. So based on the feel for the problem which you get, you may find that if the design is changed, then the effort for cleaning it may be completely eliminated. So these things are a byproduct. So the research is not a byproduct. It is actually the byproduct is the final outcome. Unintended outcomes are byproducts. It's not the.
First aim at TOT and then design projects.
Yeah. Yeah. Any more questions?
Somebody then meanwhile you conducting the completing the coursework also here itself in Mumbai. And after some time, guy gets some consultancy project and it's changed. And after some time, even though things are dynamic, things are going change. That is what
We take those up the illustrated question.
Okay, so these are things which we can take offline in a personal on case-to-case basis, because there can be a big variety of cases where the research methodology is misapplied. So this is one of the means of misapplication of the research methodology. So we can address them.
Any other questions?
In fact, you should see, in light of whatever I have discussed, now you start comparing your example with this, and then you will see the extent of misapplication of research methodology in this case. Then you will get the answer yourself. Yeah. Okay.